Okay, sounds good. Hi, can you all hear me okay? Yeah. Yeah, head's nodding, good. So I'm Walter Maguire. I'm the Chief Field Technologist with Hewlett-Packard Enterprise in the Big Data Group. Thanks for inviting me today for the second year to moderate this panel, which is focused on big data for agriculture technology. What we're going to do over the next 50 minutes or so, have some interesting themes I've discussed with the panel. They're all experts in their space. We're going to solicit their perspectives, get some views, and then assuming if there's a lot of rich discussion, we may go fill up the time. If there's not, we'll have some Q&A at the end, okay? So without further ado, I will ask my panelists to introduce themselves. Manu, you want to start?
Hello, my name is Manu Pillai. I'm the CEO founder at WaterBit. We build sensing systems that go from physics to cloud and analytics. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Robert C. I'm with USDA California Rural Development. I'm the State Broadband Coordinator, and I work on the development of ag technology, and also am working on having a agriculture hackathon at this year's State Fair.
Good. My name is Dane Kuper. I'm a sales director with Iteris. We're a public company based in Orange County, California. I've spent my young career in the precision ag space. I spent 4 years at the Climate Corporation leading sales, and then now at Iteris for a year, so I've got experience working with growers directly in the ag industry throughout the U.S.
And I'm Nathan Dorn, CEO of Food Origins. We're a hand produce traceability and tracking company. We'll collect somewhere around 2 million data points an hour around food and where it came from, put it to the cloud, and visualize it in real time.
Great. Thank you, everyone. So for today's discussion, we have a couple of big themes, but I'd like to start with a quick quiz for everyone. How many of you have heard of the Internet of Things, IoT? Show of hands. Everyone. How many of you know exactly what it is? Almost no hands, and I'm going to talk to the guy who raised his hand in the back there later. So that's kind of the point of theme one. Theme one today is let's demystify it a little bit for those of you here today. Let's talk about how we can help the agriculture industry gain some value from it. So Dane, why should a farmer care about IoT?
Yeah, I think, from my perspective, spending the last 5 years working with companies that have accelerated pretty quickly in precision ag, is the fact that we've seen a digital revolution happen in agriculture, right? We've got electronic circuits, wireless devices that are becoming more powerful and cheaper. You look at the 3G broadband services in 2009, it was a pretty sparse map. Today, it's pre-broadband coverage. And then the fact that you have the storing data is much cheaper. We've seen a 97% decrease in actually storing a gigabyte of data. And so today we live in a world where we have more connected mobile devices than people, and 85% of farmers are walking around with smartphones. And so we have new technologies coming to the farmer, and I think there's a standard out there, Walt, that they expect more connectivity, data transfer from one technology to the next, because a farmer doesn't want to have to log into 10 different platforms to manage their operation. They want connectivity and efficiency.
Yeah. So Manu, what do you think?
I think that when I take it from a technology point of view, the I in IoT means internet. That means there are certain expectations of reliability, routability, open source, and low cost. And I think that these are areas where ag can evolve into, and especially when you take redundancy and low cost together, it builds a network of reliable systems. Today, I think the reliability is still being a little challenging. There are too many single point of failure options going on. We need to fix this. So,
Robert, you've got this broader perspective, being part of the Department of Agriculture. What's your perspective on the state of the art, on where things stand today?
Well, I think you have to look at it from a farmer's perspective. And the challenge on the technology side is, a farmer is focused on, there's two parts. One, he is focused on yield. He or she is focused on increasing yield or reliable yield. Another factor that's there is on the profit side. And so they're always looking at the bottom line. So when you come in with technology or any other product, they're going to have a question as to, does it help them in that area? And does it help them do things better than before? So I would throw out, if we had a picture of it, I would put up a picture of the Farmer's Almanac. Farmer's Almanac, it's got weather predictions in there. And in fact, traditionally that's what they use in rural areas. You go in the Farmer's Almanac, and relatively accurate, I suppose, for the data of its time. And so I would say that you make it a simple form. The question is, can your IoT do better than the Farmer's Almanac is your first case. Because farmers are skeptics. I think the bottom line is that somebody comes around every week to sell a farmer the biggest cure-all solution for all the farm problems. They're selling it, they've seen it all. So they're very skeptical of this. And they're somewhat risk adverse because they've seen many of their friends and neighbors who went out there and tried something and literally went out of business because it didn't work. So that's the broader context that you operate
So this raises an interesting question. You know, we've got a lot of entrepreneurs here today, and a lot of people who want to build products, services, solutions in this industry. And I'm going to open this just generally to the panelists. How do we get over that hurdle? How do we advice for our audience? How do you find those products? How do you identify those opportunities?
Yeah, well, everything's an incremental solution. So if you think about it, you're incrementally going to give the farmer more profit, more yield, more time, decrease their G&A cost. So as Robert was saying, incrementally better data than the Farmer's Almanac. So then you've got an incremental cost or an incremental commitment from the farmer. So you've got, as an entrepreneur doing that IoT thing, what are you going to affect for that farmer? What decision outcomes are you going to make? If you're going to say that this has never been done before, it really doesn't sell the farmer on what he needs, because he's not trying to grow something he's never grown before. He's trying to grow the same thing better than what he did, or with less G&A costs, because G&A can be as high as 25% for a farmer, and that's just taking care of the people that take care of the crops. So being able to reduce that with an IoT solution gives the farmer time to go and do more of what he does best better.
I'd like
Other
to comment
thoughts?
too. Well, in precision ag and ag tech, we always talk about feeding the world. The need to double our food production by 2050 for the increasing population. But when you talk to a farmer, his problem is different. When you look at a commodity row crop farmer today, he's producing his commodity at a loss, and so he's not so much concerned about feeding the world as he is making it to next year. And that's the true problem on the farm. I always say there's 4 things you have to address, or 4 buying indicators of a farmer. And really it's whether you can help him make money, save money, eliminate risk, or save time. And if you can tie to one of those variables and help him on his specific farm, that's the key thing that they care about.
Other thoughts?
When we took a look at the market, we looked at how decisions were made. And we looked at the inputs that go to make a decision. Take an example of buying a car. You talk to your partner, you talk to your friends, you look at magazines, you test drive, and then you have weighted voting systems that help you make a decision. Sometimes the new car smell will be the dominant decision factor, and there's some emotion there. But at the end of the day, there is every one of us has an innate methodology to make a decision. What we looked at was what were the data points needed to achieve that? How could we get that data at a very low cost and reliably, and then bind that into a solution? So when we spoke with growers about what their needs were for decision making, then they opened up, because it's exactly what the panel was saying, is that how do we do things faster and use technology to make better decisions? Because there's not a single grower in business who doesn't know their business. It's about being more efficient.
I want to just double on Manu's point there. I think that's really good. And taking risk away, as Dane said, making smaller decisions. In the 1980s, Topcon and Trimble put yield monitors on top of combines. Initially, that didn't do anything that the pencil and paper didn't do. That when I loaded up a grain cart, took it to the elevator, deposited 400 bushels of wheat to the elevator, and then my grandfather said, well, there's 400 acres. We got 1 bushel per acre. Or actually, it was a lot better than that, but my math is bad. But when he put that Trimble and the Topcon unit on top, he was able to say that acre did 300 of it, the rest of it did nothing. And he was able to become more responsive. And it's taken since 1985 for us as an industry and the row crops to really get a lot of gain out of that. A lot of these IoT devices and better data for farming, it's going to lead to decisions later, years from now, that will be how we did this farming better. Eliminated variation, made smaller decisions faster.
There's also a couple of external changes that are going to drive the opportunity for IoT. I mean, the two large ones, one was already referenced in terms of the need to feed the global population. And that external driver is that if we have to double our food production or double it, or at least by 70% by the year 2050, if you look at the broad numbers, food production is not going up at a rate to meet that level. It's only going to come about, I think, through increases in yield with technology playing the key role in that. The other external event that's out there is the impact of climate change. And you're going to see probably more regulations come in as a result of that. But you're seeing, if you look at the drought as sort of being a forerunner of climate change impact in California, things like the drought or invasive species or changes in the amount of farm labor available are disruptive changes to the status quo. The drought in California, 4 years of drought, we're going into a 5th year of drought, is a completely disruptive event. It opens a window for IoT to come up with a solution, particularly on the water-related side.
So good observations. I heard a couple of you raise a point I wanted to follow up on a little bit. You know, a lot of my background has been in, I guess, what I call enterprise sales. So we show value to a business, the business makes a decision, they bring it in, they use it. Selling to farmers sounds like it's somewhat different. And I wonder if I could get your perspectives on what does that mean? I mean, it's one thing to build the best product ever, but if you're one of 10 people going to that farmer, how do you get that message across effectively? Let's start with Dane.
Yeah, I think we all look at it from more of a Moneyball concept that, and you're all probably familiar with Moneyball, obviously, but you know, farmers too operate on beliefs and biases, right?
Yeah.
From what they've traditionally done, what's been passed down, and we're telling them to the extent you can replace your belief and bias with the data, you gain the advantage, right? But it's not a revolution, it's an evolution. And you have to tie it in a very simple way down at the farm level and help him save money, make money, like I said, those 4 buying indicators to help him, you know, excel his farm.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, a lot of the change that's come to ag recently, and not picking on any Bay Area companies, it's been the evolution of technology that has said, wait a minute, what else can we do with this? And we're going to take it to ag. And that's kind of cool, except for you're not going to sell a lot of stuff to a farmer when you show up with loafers and in a zip car, and you're out there in the field with them guys, because it's just not the way we think. But take it the other way. Come out to California or to Salinas and get your feet dirty for a few days, learn the problems, find the opportunities of what you can save for the farmer, and then go back to Silicon Valley and find the technologies you can apply to those problems. That's where we're going to accelerate really fast with, I think, IoT or tech in ag.
And I think one of the other changes that has occurred is because what we've been talking about is where technology goes to the farmer and is trying to sell something, and the farmer is this passive taker of the new developments. You can flip it the other way. Western Growers Association, which is the largest trade association of fruit and vegetable growers in the U.S., they recently have opened an innovation center in Salinas. And from their perspective is they have recognized, to their credit, they have recognized the potential of this new ag technology. But rather than be a passive recipient of it, they have set up this innovation center so they can lay out, these are the challenges that we face. These are our priorities. And can you, the technology sector, or whoever out there, can you develop a solution to those that work for us? And I think their basic goal is they want those solutions to be developed faster than they otherwise might have if just by random chance a technology development showed up and was valuable to them. They want it the other way. They want to say, this is what we need. Here's the challenge to you. Come up with a solution. It would also probably help in getting acceptance because that's a place where things can be vetted.
So you touched on, you mentioned something interesting there, and it kind of triggered a thought for me. You know, innovation across any industry is notoriously difficult to make systematic. Bunch of entrepreneurs here. What's your advice to an entrepreneur on how to come up with that idea, how to make that idea the right idea?
I think that for us, we started off on the premise that we knew nothing, and the only way to find out was to ask questions. So between my partner and I, Leaf, and he's out there, I think we've gone through a pair of tires on our cars, or a set of tires. We drove up and down the valley. We went basically from Bakersfield up to well into Mendocino. We talked to pot farmers, almond growers, rice growers, walnut growers. We went into every place. Everyone would give us time, or ask questions. We correlated what was common, what was different, what was the difference even within crops, what were different, what were the differences between growers in Westlands and not Westlands. And by the time we ended up, we realized that we could systematically create a solution. Then we went back to universities to validate our research approach, which, by the way, we just got awarded grant from a National Science Foundation to take our things further. But that was really, it was all about asking questions, because like Nathan said, you can't show up in a zip car. You got to show up and listen.
I think that reference to universities is also equally important, because from a farmer's perspective, they don't know, amongst all the possible solutions that come by, they don't know which is the best, which really works, who's selling trombones. I think that, so the universities play a critical role in validation of that. That's the third-party validation. You could go to any of the ag schools, actually in any state, and do a contract, and the professors will validate the issue. You could go to the Agricultural Research Service, part of USDA. They do similar things in terms of validation.
So I heard a comment. So Nathan, you said evolution, more like the sort of evolutionary, not revolutionary. Is it, so it's incremental steps?
I think it was Dane, but you want to go there?
Yeah, I think that's the key, is to understand that it is a process when you're on the farm.
Yeah.
And that you don't always make the sale right away, and that, there's a lot of great technology that comes out of Silicon Valley in a lot of different areas. And, I think another importance is ease of use. I think a confused farmer is no buyer at all. And then connectivity. These farmers are being approached with a lot of different technologies and just a lot of noise in general. And they want to better understand how can they deploy it operationally. Does it connect to an operating system they're currently using? Can they move data in and out of it? They want to be able to find a way to be able to connect it with what they're already doing, and it needs to be easy.
Is there room for game-changing innovation?
I think there is. Especially given the location of our conference, one of the biggest metrics we use in data comps, for example, is the energy per byte, or the dollar per byte. The energy per byte, or the joules per byte that we costs to move a piece of data from a farm into a cloud system is just atrocious. It's just not even funny. So that really means that we have a fundamental engineering problem to solve in data acquisition backhaul, without which you don't, if you don't have data, you can't play big data. You got to get the data. There's a revolution there.
I almost say it looks the opposite, like there isn't going to be game-changing innovation, because farming is in evolution all the time, and by nature, innovation will come and it'll keep things the same. So Napa was the prune capital of California at one time. Salinas grew the most beets. That stuff migrated out of our areas to other places to grow, and now it's the berry capital and the wine grape capital. We may innovate so that it looks the same to you as the consumer down the line. And that would be the greatest goal for us. Like, find a way to keep wine coming at $9, $10, great wine coming at $9, $10 a bottle, and strawberries at $3 a basket.
If you wanted to point to a specific sort of item or event as a game changer for agriculture that's technology-based, it's the iPad. If you were to talk to farmers 10 years ago, no iPads. And now, and I've actually been trying to arrange for a photo shoot of this with the Farm Bureau, that farmers are operating everything using the iPad. So now what's in the pickup truck is a mount with the iPad on it. So they can drive over to the farm. They don't necessarily have to walk through the farm, but they can check on all the equipment and all the operations through that iPad. And that is a huge change. And of course, with that, obviously, if you're gotten to the point where you're using the iPad, you're open to more of the IoT type innovations.
So let's suppose somebody's got the great technology, they built something. How do you go about building that value proposition for a very busy farmer? How do you develop the proof? How do you build it? How do you position it? It's a very broad question, but very challenging for the young company. I'll open that up to the whole panel.
Well, I think one opportunity is where you go and demonstrate this. Go to where the farmers go. So for California, every February there's the World Ag Expo, which is supposed to be the world's largest outdoor farm equipment show, and down in Tulare. And you go down there, farmers from all over California, actually all over the world, go down there and they look at the latest farm equipment. So, and these are your competitors as well. So you go down there and all the farmers be there tire kicking, and you'll see what's going on. I think that's one means that's very economical to do.
Other thoughts?
My thought on this is make sure your technology really has the game-changing impact you believe it does. And I say this almost every conference I'm in. My brother farms 9,000 acres still in Nebraska with 9 guys. So autonomous driving might get him from 9 guys to 8. But somebody's going to probably have to take that tractor to the field and offload it anyway. So 9 guys to 9 guys and a little extra time. When you're talking about autonomous work or something like that, look at the industry you're working in. And the berry industry, the former company I worked for had 10,000 acres with 20,000 people. If you can cut fractions of a second out of every person's workday, you've created a whole different level of value. And if not, don't think that your sale isn't as valuable, but don't go out and believe that you're changing the world by being able to make it easier to drive through the field that you already drive through, the same value.
I think that same line with that type of equipment, my understanding is that you could plow 7% more, or you would get 7% more furrows because of the accuracy of the autonomy. There's your bottom line. So from a farmer's perspective, everything else is the same size field, same inputs. 7% more furrows means 7% more yield, and you can see the numbers then pay for itself. If you can do the same thing with other products, or flip to the negative side here in California, the driver is going to be, can you save on the water and the reduced amount of water that you already have? Because that is the product that is in short supply. And I think that means also there's an opportunity for things that work for farmers to go in right now.
Yeah, I would agree. Economies of scale is going to be huge. Obviously, as you get more consolidation happening in farming, they're just larger operationally. And then, I don't think really make sure you don't underestimate the IoT. Of connecting your technology with other technologies generally brings multiplying value back to your technology. And so it's, that's something to be very aware of, and that's something we do at Iteris, is we can bring in sensor networks, and people trying to manage irrigation, they may have in-field sensors for irrigation, but we deploy, a forecast model. So it helped them not only understand when is the crop in need, but also when is the best time to put that water down so you get the least amount of evaporation and you're not irrigating in front of a big rain. So it's connecting the Internet of Things that brings value back to your technology too.
So if there's a network effect to this, how does the young firm plug into that ecosystem? What's the right way to do that? Or what are your thoughts on the right way to do that?
I think that's actually one of the most salient points to look at. We are a young company. Iteris actually is a supplier to us and a strategic supplier to us. I mean, we have integrated Iteris capabilities and Iteris long-range planning into our own business strategy. And we ourselves have adopted a policy of using technology that is as openly documented as possible, open source, open standards, with the intent that we can drive the cost of infrastructure down and increase the ease of cooperation. Of course, we have our own source code that we don't release to anyone. That's our IP. But infrastructure costs can come down, and plug-in opportunities through open, well-documented APIs are really a way to go. But I think the question before that is really to understand the metrics. Like if you're running a factory, you have a takt time, you have unit cost, all this. Those apply. Just as Nathan said, you really need to understand what are the cost drivers, and also what part of those costs can be inflected to increase profits. Understanding that is the key to building the business that you want to do.
Another opportunity that's often overlooked is actually the role of government policy to help companies. I'll just read out the name because it's too hard to. It's called SWEEP, but it's the State Water Efficiency and Enhancement Program, which the California Department of Food and Agriculture administers. And they just gave out, I think, $160 million in grants, or maybe 160 grants and $100+ million in grants to farmers to adopt new technology for water efficiency that would reduce the carbon footprint of farms. So that's a case where this reduces the risk to farmers because obviously you have these government subsidy coming in for the adoption of the technology. There is some third-party vetting of it by CDFA and state government of that. And as those things get adopted, that's another means of getting the technology out there and accepted.
And I think there's other organizations like Ag Gateway, Open Ag Data Alliance that really have data privacy and data transfer type standards that you can look at as far as transferring data and the policies around that. And so those are organizations we're very aware of as we allow producers to transfer data in and out.
Is this an industry, in your opinion, where the standards are going to be bottoms up or top down or some mix?
Yeah, I think the standard's already been set that it's the farmer's data.
Yeah.
No matter what organization or technology you're dealing with, it's the farmer's data. So having a standard to be able to move that data in or out is just going to be a standard requirement that you're going to see industry-wide.
Other thoughts?
Well, I think you heard from the previous panel talking about who owns the data.
Right.
And it is at the basic data is coming off the farm, so that data does belong to the farmer.
Yeah.
So that's already set.
And the value is going to come from sharing it. Point blank, we can say the farmer owns the data, but the marketer is going to ask for that data, and the farmer is going to get more revenue from sharing it. Hopefully the harvest worker is going to get some of that data. Everything that shows up on his pay stub today is going to end up being his, and he's going to have that for portability. The consumer or the retailer is going to demand it, and then the consumer is going to take it and expect it there. So I know the farmer owns the data, but transparency is going to happen to the degree that when you have a strawberry in your hands, you're going to know who it was that picked it, what chemicals were put on that field, what day it was planted, everything about that you don't even have a vision for today. And we're going to call it the farmer's data, but you're going to say that you're entitled to it and you're going to get it eventually.
So thank you for the perspective. So I think we got 5 minutes left, is that right? So I wanted to allow a few minutes for Q&A. Quick show of hands just so the panel knows, who here is an entrepreneur? Okay, a lot of you in the room, great. So we got 5 minutes for Q&A. I think we've got some mics floating around. Questions for the panel? Got one here?
Jobs in AgTech, who has, for lack of a better word, arrogance to say that I don't need user forums, I don't need user input. I have almost this yogic vision of thinking into the future as to what the end user may need and design something that would revolutionize agriculture, which is the most basic requirement worldwide, and really come out with something that totally changes the landscape of how agriculture is done ethically, with scale, and really feeds the entire world population with the same quality and dignity that is needed, and that's the most human basic need.
That's a great question. What do you guys think?
So I take it you're saying we need someone who will invent something that we don't know we all have to have. There are not too many people like that. That's how I interpret Steve Jobs and all the different Apple products. The closest I can come as an example in agriculture was Norman Borlaug, who was an agronomist, and he developed hybrid seeds and different sort of improved methods of farming in the 60s, and is actually given the credit for creating the green revolution across the world, which in its time period did a lot to reduce malnutrition or famine. And we probably need someone, could use someone like that today, but I think progress is much more incremental. That anything you see out there, particularly in the technology side, there's maybe the development of an additional device, like with solar cells initially created in the 50s, and then there's that 50-year time span before it becomes commercially set. I think our goal is to shorten that time frame.
What I love about that comment is that Steve Jobs was a hardware developer. I mean, you go to the venture capital world, and most of us are asked, what is your software solution so that it monetizes real well? Hardware-enabled stuff. The ag industry is full of it. You're going to have to put a piece of a tractor or something special to make it good for the farmer to do it. And the Steve Jobs thing, he invented that iPod, iPad, iPhone. Those were hardware that enabled software to do its job really well. That's what I like about that comment.
So, yeah, the question really is there going to be a rock star for AgTech, right? So I think we have time for one more question.
Yeah, so my name's Tyler Bennett, and we've been selling to farmers for 80 years. So we definitely know farmers, what makes them buy, what makes them hesitant to buy. And you have to remember that technology has been coming to ag for quite a long time. And farmers have been burned and been let down several times over the past decade. And so they're very, very skeptical, and I think the panel touched on that. And if you don't have a local partner or someone who is a trusted source that is already in that farmer's network, you're going to have a very difficult time flying in and getting them to sell something. There was an example today of, there's a soil moisture sensing company, we won't mention any names, but they went in and actually told the farmer that they could farm better than he could by using their technology. And so that company is dead in the Central Valley. We live in the Central Valley, we've grown up in the Central Valley, we know what makes them work, and they will never sell another thing for the rest of the year. So it's having a local partner and having somebody that's involved in the farmer's network is crucial for a new technology company. The second thing is, the reason why farmers have been burned over the last decade is the reliability of the information. So you can have 50 pieces of information or 500 pieces of information, but if the farmer needs accurate information 24/7, 365 days a year, you cannot have glitches or crops will die. That's the issue. And so when they've had glitches in the past, they're not going to rely solely on this data and this information because it has not historically been reliable. There's been too many glitches and not enough testing by the technology companies prior to launch. Thank you.
So maybe one quick comment, and I believe our time is up.
I think this is a very good point, and what we, as a company, we actually do soil sensing, not just moisture. The starting point of any conversation is with respect, and don't muck with someone else's business. The second point goes back to one of the opening comments I mentioned about the I being in the internet, meaning internet, and the data and hardware systems reliability essentially sucks today in what I have seen in the farms. There are some products out there that I think are close to criminally insane to be deployed and should never be put on sale by any self-respecting engineer. And I want to make this a point. We need to make a change. We need to put the I in IoT and make products that are reliable, self-healing, and move forward. Thanks for asking that question.
So I think we're out of time here. Thank you for attending. We have a round of applause for our panelists, please.